Good morning, everybody. It's Mike Coppage here, and I want to thank you all for your prayers in regard to my mom. She's doing much better, and will probably be moved out of ICU after the weekend. So thanks so much for your support with that. And I'd like to talk about Warren Easton this morning. It seems to be the consensus that Warren Easton is the best team overall in Louisiana this year. And I still haven't done enough research for me to say which teams I think are, um, how I think they fall in my overall top 10 or overall top 20. But there's no doubt that Warren Easton has the most talent per capita on its roster. So this is a team that certainly will get as much or more attention from college recruiters as anyone out there. And of course, the marquee player, one of several, is wide receiver Tyron Johnson. He's ranked as the #1 receiver in the nation by Rivals.com. And I remember, I guess, a couple of years ago when he got his first offer from Texas Tech, and he leads the team. One thing that's interesting to watch, I'd like to skip to real quick, is their quarterback position. Deshawn Smith has been their quarterback, and he's a Texas A&M defensive back commit. He's going to switch to the secondary in college. But earlier this year when I was at the NUC 5-star combine in Denham Springs, Arthur McGinnis wasn't there, but I was in my truck killing time before the combine, and I called Arthur to interview him, and he had told me that they're gonna have a new quarterback this year, and he was keeping the details under the radar. I couldn't quite discern whether he was saying that the new quarterback was going to be a transfer or whether it's going to be somebody who is already on the roster. So I haven't seen mention of that in some of the previews I've read about Warren Easton. Most people seem to be under the assumption that Caper Smith will be the quarterback. So I don't know either way, but it's just a little tidbit to watch out for. So Arthur McGinnis, since I mentioned him last, yeah, he's a 4-star linebacker, defensive end type hybrid, and he is a guy who's always been great with interviews. I've always enjoyed talking with him. So he started out injured earlier in his career, and he really had phenomenal outings on the combine and camp circuit over the last couple of years. He did really well at the Nike Spark that I attended. Had an excellent score, top 10 score, and Arthur should have a big year. We talked about Deshawn Smith, and regardless of where he plays, he'll have a big impact. The one thing that's interesting about Smith is that his 40 time was he ran around a 5.0 or so at the Nike Spark. So he's one of those guys that just goes to show you that you don't have to run a fast 40-yard dash to be a top-notch football player. So just thought I would point that out. Last year, Easton had kind of a running back by committee with Devin Glenn and another back, both splitting a lot of carries. One of the backs graduated, but Devin will be returning, and he's an undersized guy, around 5'7", who considers himself a Darren Sproles type, and he's committed to Tulane. Also, Easton has another player committed to Tulane in defensive back Jeremy Francis, and Francis impressed a lot of people at the New Orleans Core 6 showcase earlier this year, which I also attended. He was one of the top 2 defensive backs there. The top defensive back there was well, there were a couple of them. There was Francis, and then there was also Deshawn Raymond of East Jeff, and then there was Travell Johnson from Catholic Baton Rouge, who won the overall MVP that day. And so Francis will be a name to be reckoned with in the secondary for Easton, and he's somebody that can go one-on-one with the other team's top receivers. Also, players to look out for. You got a couple more wide receivers. So Deshawn isn't the only large school team in the New Orleans/River Parish area that has a bevy of top receivers. Easton does as well, with Daryl Clark and Dedrick Shy, both coming back this year. Wrapping it up, also Easton has arguably the top junior wide receiver in the state in Clyde LaFleur. Michael Jones is considered by most people to be the #1 receiver in the state for 2016, but the young man from Easton is right there behind him, and on some sites he actually is ranked higher than Jones. But Easton is gonna put up I'm trying to think of new words to use. They're gonna make the scoreboard explode this year. How about that? Especially in the early going, because I don't think they're going to get tested a whole lot in some of the early games. Interesting game to watch in week 1 is St. Amant, because NOLA.com is real big on St. Amant. I know they have St. Amant ranked inside their top 40, I think somewhere closer to 30 overall in the state. So that's a game to watch. Later on in the season is when it could get tough for Easton and District. There's a couple of teams that beat Easton last year. One's Landry Walker, one is Edna Carr. Walker is supposed to be really good this year, according to what I'm reading. Carr lost so many players last year that it's hard to imagine them being as good as last year. But don't sleep on Edna Carr, of course. My friend Cody Anthony, shout out to him. He's the biggest Edna Carr fan I know, who doesn't live in New Orleans. So the last couple players I'll discuss real quick, just throw their names out in passing. Kendall Franklin, who is he worked out with the offensive lineman at the NUC 5-star Denham Springs, but he's listed as a defensive end, and he's committed to Arizona. And then there's also Calvin Lumpkins, who is Calvin Lumpkins, 5'11", 220 is what he's listed at on Rivals. So he's also a player to watch. And Easton last year went deep in the playoffs. They lost in the quarterfinals by 9 points to eventual state champion East Jeff. So Easton is considered the top team in the nation by most people this year in Louisiana, and certainly a ton of people will be watching with all the uncommitted top prospects on their team. So good luck to Easton this year, and with that, I'm out. Peace. Let me know any topics you'd like to hear discussed. Hit me up on Facebook, and just give me a shout. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching.